Today I want to talk about an interesting thing that Microsoft has proposed with reinventing the web. Of course, reinventing it for our modern AI age. So Microsoft and Cloudflare are working together to produce a new thing which they will say is kind of the new web. And I have some thoughts and some concerns about this. Thanks for checking out this video by Switch to Linux. We like to talk about things relating to free and open source, and we throw in some mismatch of consumer rights and all sorts of other fun stuff in there as well. Like this type of content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. And today we do want to talk about this partnership between Microsoft and Cloudflare. It kind of starts over here on Windows Central. Microsoft and Cloudflare want to reinvent the web and leave Google behind. Of course, there's a tech radar analysis of the same thing as well. And so what they're looking at here is the way the current web and the search engine results go is it indexes based on keywords. So, of course, back in the day, in the early days of the internet, and I remember going on, Dogpile, Excite. Let me know your favorite old school search engines down below, those ones that existed before Google did. And of course, they would crawl around the internet and they would look at relevant words, and then they would show you things based on the words you're looking for. And then, of course, the business guys got involved in the whole SEO thing, and then the whole well gets poisoned with everybody just trying to do whatever they could to show up on the top, no matter if it was relevant or not. And then, of course, the advertisers get in, and this is kind of the phase we're near the end of now, where really to rank, it's a pay-to-play. You throw money in advertising, whether that's in Facebook to land on the top of their people's feeds at all times, no matter what you're interested in, or Google, or even the good search engines even have advertising. Now, they're doing more contextual ads than interest-based, which I always think is better. If you're going to have ads, they should be contextual. In other words, the ad is related to the content of the page, not the interest of the user. I push back against all of the interest of the user-based advertising. If you're going to have any of it, it should be contextual based on what you are looking at. Now, we are moving near the end of this age, of course. If you remember, there was an old clip from Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, that said, when you go into Google and you type in a query, you get a list of answers. He says that is wrong. He says you should go to Google, type in something, and get one answer. That is perfection. Now, that is also dystopian nightmare, because that means you go to search some answer and you do not have a variety of opinions. You have the approved narrative, the approved authoritative statement. Everything else goes by the wayside. And the reality is, with the new instances of AI, that is kind of what Google is moving towards. You see it on not only Google, but other search engines. You do a basic query and you don't have a list of links easily accessible. Yeah, you can scroll down for them, but they want to give you one big AI synopsis, which is the authoritative truth, of course, which completely has filters to exclude things that are contrary to the narrative, which means it produces docile, obedient citizens, not free-thinking people who critically evaluate all of the evidence and come up with their own conclusion. And that really is where the challenge comes from. And so what Microsoft and Cloudflare want to do is working together to produce a model which basically improves that, which also means now that the new way of SEO is going to game this system, so that now our authoritative website is the one that provides the answer. Now, they're doing this by a thing called NL Web. So this is a new Microsoft product called Natural Language Web. So bringing conversational interfaces directly with the web. So this is back in May of this year. Microsoft introduced NL Web, an open project designed to simplify the creation of natural language interfaces for websites, making it easy to turn any site into an AI-powered app. Learn more about the technology and how web publishers can get started. Effectively, it will add to the schema.org, all the things that tells a website. What is it? What are the description of the site? What are the keywords? Who's the author? All these types of things. Well, now we're going to have a series of query questions to ask in natural language, either by an agentic AI, that is the type of AI that we have tasked with going onto the internet in order to go in and examine what the query is we're trying to do. Find me the fastest cars. It goes around the internet and sorts all the things, and that way it'll come back and give you an answer based on all of the things that it found. And or you can go on and interact directly with a website. You can go in and instead of taking through the painstaking task of reading what's on the website, you instead just get to ask the website questions, and the website will query you answers. So they said the technology here is agnostic, supports all major operating systems, allows developers to choose components that best suit their needs, supporting all major models and vector databases. So what are the benefits to the publishers? So the idea here is that by utilizing the NL web standards is that your website is acts more appropriate with an agentic AI. And utilizing this, it allows you to basically query websites with simple questions. That is what their goal is. Now, there are some very early adopters of this technology used for testing it. You can see those here on the screen. Like, some of these are like Eventbrite and TripAdvisor. That's some shady pasts, O'Reilly Media, is that Bill O'Reilly? I have no idea who O'Reilly Media is. That sounds like it, so I don't know. So, of course, how do you get started? Basically, there is a lightweight model. It's on GitHub. You can use this and install this onto your system. Now, it uses not just NL Web, but it also uses AutoRag. This is Cloudflare's infrastructure built for AI. There's a little bit less information on this one out there, but you can see fully managed RAG applications, continuously update, scale. Basically what this is retrieval augmented generation is what RAG stands for. It allows you to power AI applications by utilizing this service from Cloudflare. Their system will go ahead and catalog all this stuff and feed this into the schema for NL Web in order so that you can go in and you do your simple query search on some search engine like Google, and instead of having a list of things that you get that you have to horribly read through them all and make a horrible decision, it'll just tell you what the correct answer is. I need to know something. This is the correct answer. No more thinking, no more examination. Do not worry. We have your back. This is definitely an interesting thing. And so what the idea here is, instead of having this internet, which is full of all of these different yelling voices, you go to the internet and you simply get a query of a single result. That is what their goal is, which is exactly what Eric Schmidt wanted to do way back when he was talking about how Google was working. They say traditionally searching the web has been built on keywords. You type in a query, the search engine returns a ranked list of links to choose from. Now, the challenge, of course, with this is that you get the SEO scams where they just keyword stuff. And this is really the internet we live in right now. It is very difficult to find good and relevant information because everybody just throws a bunch of vomit up, which has been made infinitely worse with AI, as AI has done a really good job to poison the SEO wells to just get slop moved to the top of every type of query you are searching for. And it's all brand new blogs. It's all, brand new, fresh installed. Many of them you go back just a few months and you'll find the default WordPress sample pages. They didn't have the foresight to take that stuff off. I found one site which is being used by one of these new marketing companies. We're going to get you. In fact, I'll just call them out. It was Raptor Marketing, Raptor something. But these guys here, they had this new business model. We're going to get you SEO everywhere. And basically all they're doing is you're taking your website and they're just dumping your name into a bunch of AI generated nonsense. And I tracked back because a client sent one of these to me and I looked at it and there's something seems fishy about this website. I looked at it. The website was less than a year old. So I went back and they had no archive, no index. I just kept on going back and more pages and more pages and more pages until I got to the very end, and they had like 35 posts which still had lorem ipsum text all over. And then, of course, you get into that last one. It's the WordPress sample post. That was all still on this AI slop website with this company, this new marketing company, brand new company. Raptor is in their name. I forget exactly which one it is, but Raptor is in their name. And all they are basically doing is they're taking money from people that are getting all these amazing links on the internet, and it is just filling your company name all over AI slop to the four corners of the internet. And that is, the AI has introduced the brand new problem for the web, that now, even if we're trying to do the search and we're trying to research things, we are now just hit with a giant bowl of AI slop, and trying to find the rational voice. I don't want to say correct voices, but the rational, well thought voices which have been put forth on the internet by real thinking human beings has become harder and harder and harder. And so now we have produced a problem that now Microsoft and Cloudflare have said, hey, we need to solve this crisis. How do we solve this crisis? Good question. Well, we end up solving the crisis by having this new type of web, which is all more conversational, and it gives you the answers you need, not a list of various links. So the new web standard at Microsoft designs so websites can open up structured endpoints for natural language queries. The simple version lets you visit a website and use the prompt like /ask to type a question. The site gives you a direct answer instead of forcing you to dig through pages to find it. The idea is to make websites feel more conversational, like conversational apps, and less like static pages. Now, AutoRag is a service that handles all of the generation of those queries, crawls the website, indexes content, and converts it into embeddings stored in a managed database. The setup keeps the content fresh with continuous updates and removes the technical burden of building your own vector database. So it does these two services work together. Working together, they're defining the new standard of how queries and responses should be structured, and combining them together allows websites to answer natural language queries from both human and AI agents without relying on scraping. So then it goes into how you can set this up on Cloudflare. So this is really where we get into some thought processes here. They take a different approach by bypassing the crawl and rank model entirely. If it gains traction, it could pull traffic from Google and towards Microsoft's ecosystem, strengthening Bing and Copilot in the process. So welcome to their next plan of anti-competitive nonsense. All right, there are risks for consumers too. Answer engines cut out the middlemen, which some may prefer, but these systems are not perfect. They can be prone to bias and having issues with accuracy. Relying on AI-generated answers reduces visibility for smaller sites, pulling money away from those whose content actually helped train the tools in the first place. And this author here says he's not comfortable with that, but he'd be curious to see what happens. Now, I have some thoughts about this as a former educator and somebody that, likes my functioning brain. This type of approach where it really is Google's plan, was Google's plan to say, hey, you don't go to a search engine and get a bunch of things. That's a bug. You want one answer. Well, the problem is that one answer is the authoritative official answer, and to question it is to question life itself. And we've seen this lately. Think about this, okay, and understand this. I hold an earned PhD in the hard sciences, okay? Science itself never settles anything. Science itself is an ever-going process. Science itself is always up to questioning. Science itself never provides definitive answers. Absolute truth about science. That's the only truth, as there is no solid. I know it sounds like I'm shifting outside of the absolutisms that I should have as some crazy Christian, and instead I am adopting postmodernism. I am not, I assure you. It's just that in science, it is always to question everything. But what we saw 5 years ago is to question the authoritative narrative would be to question truth itself. I mean, one crazy psycho in the United States government came out and said, I am the science. Yeah, and to question him is to question science itself. That was a crazy narrative. And so what happens is the emergence of what is considered authoritative statements. And so with the authoritative statements, this is the actual approved answer. Everything else is wrong, and you're no longer allowed to question it. That is the world this moves us to. This makes people less intelligent, and it assumes that answers are always correct as they are spewed out by AI, especially if they are gatekeeping the authoritative sources. We can't have this source because he's just a conspiracy theorist for whichever side you don't like. So we have to exclude everything this person says. So now all of the authoritative approved sources by the big tech companies, these are what pushes them way into the zeitgeist of culture. The zeitgeist is what shifts the culture. If you're unaware of what that term moves, it digs into the sociology of what would be called the epistemology. The epistemology is how cultures shift from mindsets over the ages, and so it raises issues with shifting that narrative, the epistemology, as it were. The third step, by the way, of the selfish ledger. If you guys don't remember the old selfish ledger video that leaked out of Google almost a decade ago now, and it was basically 3 steps. The first step is get everybody used to using all of our free services. Second step is utilize those services to fill in the gaps. Find the information we do not have on these people. How much do they weigh? Well, I don't know. Let's go ahead and get them into a fitness plan where we'll have a smart scale to put his measurements into a database. We'll put a permanent medical monitor on his wrist that's always feeding data back to the databases. We know the health of these people. We know the sleep patterns of these people. We know the eating patterns of these people based on the differences that we know the body does when you're eating and when you're resting and when you're running and when you're watching TV. The second phase of this was to collect as much data as possible so that you can micro-target, that they may not know your name, but they know so much about you, they can pinpoint you from the crowd. And they still call that anonymous data. And it's not anonymous. It can micro-target you down to the individual level. But then the third phase in the selfish ledger, remember the third phase was this auto-generating ledger that kept everybody in line and pushed them in the appropriate means of thinking, directing them in the direction that the ledger wanted them to go. Of course, the ledger is controlled by somebody, those at the top. And so it allows us to fully shift the narrative in whatever direction they're going. You go on to search for something, you want to go back and search for some horse dewormer that made popularity 5 years ago, and you will find nothing about it because there's no official authoritative sources, because everybody who counteracted the authoritative sources just shut down as being a conspiracy theorist wacko, and our AI is trained not to give you answers into that mode. So the best thing for us to do is to have no filtering at all, no advertising at all, which pushes things out, allow people multiple perspectives to think through issues. That is always how people learn. People do not learn by feeding them the answers. People learn by struggling through the resources to come to the answers based on their life experiences. And there was even a meme I saw not too long ago, and it was, back in the 90s, we thought the problem is that nobody had access to all the information. 35 years later, where everyone has access to every bit of information, nope, that wasn't the problem. Okay. And the more you feed answers, in fact, I knew a family that the kids figured out how to manipulate their parents into doing all their homework for them. And it wouldn't surprise anybody to know that every one of those kids in that family spent multiple times in and out of rehab centers for various forms of substance abuses because their parents never taught them how to learn, always handed it to them. And so they always grew up expecting life was to be simple and easy. And when we have a world where we have a question about something, we go to the internet and we are not faced with a variety of opinions by which you examine those opinions and come to your right conclusions, then you get to a world where people can no longer think and they just buy whatever narrative is out there. And that's really what we're seeing in our divided right versus left, because you can pinpoint any one issue. Let me pick one issue and mention what I see from both sides here, because it relates to tech, but it relates to politically. So I'll be briefly political for a moment, but don't worry, I will offend both sides here. Okay, so look at, there is a lawsuit going on in some cities. I know St. Louis was one of them, where they were suing Kia and Hyundai cars. And they're suing these cars because they're too easy to break into. So if you watch right-leaning sources like The Blaze, and I remember one particular host on The Blaze is like, you don't sue the car manufacturer, you lock up the criminals. Okay, I completely understand that point of view. Okay, because there is a problem with people on the left not wanting to lock criminals up. Like, and that's a problem. Criminals can't commit crime if they're in jail. Just for you. But here's the thing. Let's take this analogy. I go into the 7-Eleven and I leave my car running and run inside of the store. That is stupid. In some jurisdictions, that may even be illegal because it produces itself a nuisance, an attractive nuisance for criminals. But if I leave my car and my keys in there and my car running and the door's unlocked and run into the 7-Eleven to grab my Big Gulp Slurpee or something because I'm working on my diabetes too or something, you know, and somebody comes in and steals my car, yeah, that's a problem. Someone stole my car, and that guy had the choice to steal the car or not steal the car. Do we need to lock up the criminal? Yes, we do. Why? Well, because if I'm walking by somebody who leaves their car on, I'm not going to steal their car. Why? Because I'm not a criminal. So a person who sees an easy-to-steal car and steals it, do we need to lock that person up? Yes, because they stole a car. All right? Now, here's the problem. And these are the problem on the people on the left that the right do not understand. The reason the car manufacturer needs to be sued, and this is what the people on the right can't seem to understand. Yes, the car manufacturer needs to be sued because both of those cars used Stack Overflow copy and pasted a security module, including hard-coded administrative credentials, meaning that any person who had the desire to commit crime could buy $20 worth of equipment and spend one Saturday afternoon, create a device that could steal any Kia or Hyundai car. Yes, that means you need to sue the manufacturer because they have created an attractive nuisance. And so, yes, people on the right are correct that we need to lock up the criminals, but people on the left are correct that we need to sue the car manufacturer. That is one of these situations. And we have this polarized world where you're either on the right that says, oh my God, you just have to lock the criminals up and the cars won't get stolen. And you have the people on the left, well, they're just making these cars too easy to steal. It is a joint matter, and we have to examine it from both perspectives. And if you are buying it, like if you're just engaged in the algorithms of every single social media system that's out there, you're only tying yourself into one of those sides or the other, and it produces a radical society because we no longer have a circumstance by which we can evaluate both sides equally, because the algorithm says, oh, this guy likes right-wing stuff, let's just feed him nothing but right-wing. This guy likes left-wing stuff, let's feed him nothing but left-wing. This model that Google and Cloudflare is proposing intensifies that. So what is the best thing we should do? The best thing we should do for the web is to create topical boards. So here is a topical board on various people discussing pros and cons of right to repair or consumer rights, like the Consumer Rights Wiki type stuff. That would be a pro-consumer rights stuff. You might have some also on the same board would be some lobbyist group. These are the arguments against it. And allow a person to read both the wiki consumerist stuff and read on the opposing view. Look at what both arguments are making and make your decision based on critical thinking. So having topical board links out there. So if I go to Google now, instead of typing in, should St. Louis sue Kia? Instead of having Google spit out an answer, well, Kia has made insecure cars and so they must be sued, or whatever it would do. I have no idea what Google would do. I don't know. Let me go to Google right now and see in live. Let me just see what would actually happen if I do that. Let's do, should St. Louis sue Kia? Oh boy, of course it wants me. Verify I'm a robot. Thank you, Google. I guess this is my punishment for never using Google products, right? Oh, we're not even getting any AI stuff. That's sad. I was totally expecting to have some form of AI answer over there. Oh, well, apparently not. I guess it's not a question asked of AI enough. We got to work on this NL web, get that moving. But I'd be curious to see what it would ask if you ask some politically charged question. Of course, that's one that I've thought about for a while, so I don't know. But if instead you go to Google and you type in, right to repair or consumer rights, I should be able to see a giant list of links without any advertising situations, anything else, maybe even a page. Here is a consumer rights page. Here's a various lists of links. Examine each of these lists of links without any specific sorting, any specific weighing, any specific anything. Get rid of all of the SEO poisoning, get rid of all of the advertisement poisoning, get it to the point where all information is just freely available without any other outside filters, and allow people to make their decisions. The problem is that is counter to the intentions of the elite. Okay, that is not what the powers that be would like us to do. They want us to have their answers and only their answers. They do not want us to critically think. And this is why it is so important for us to be a little bit rebellious in that case and critically think. We should be examining all sources. We should be looking at, why is it that we are suing Kia instead of locking up the criminals, or why is it that we're locking up the criminals instead of suing Kia? Why can't we do both? Let's get the criminals out the street who will fall victim to attractive nuisance, and let's get rid of the attractive nuisance. Sounds like a better approach, doesn't it? But this is the type of stuff we're talking about. This web that Microsoft and Cloudflare want to make is counter to that narrative because it wants to give us only its authoritative answer. It does not want us to think through our challenges or our problems or anything else. For that reason, this is frightening stuff, and we really, really need to push back against it. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.